and I am delighted to welcome to the stage today Ambassador John Bolton.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here in Iowa, and I thank all of you for attending. This is the kind of diligence we're going to need as we proceed toward the 2016 election cycle, and it's just an honor for me to be here. I want to thank Steve King and Dave Bossie and Citizens United. It's a fantastic idea and a real treat. As Steve King said, I want to talk to you about national security. I don't think there's ever been a more important time in recent years to do that, especially given what's happened to our country over the last 6 years. For the past 6 years, we've waited for Obama to lead, to defend our country, and he has consistently failed. 2 more years of danger remain until 2016, and his former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, is no more up to the job than he was. We are, without question, less secure than we were 6 years ago. You know, you've heard the phrase several times today, Ronald Reagan, the only political leader who can amend scriptures and make it better, when he talked about the shining city on the hill. Ladies and gentlemen, our president has drained the moat and is leaving the gates open and undefended. We cannot afford 8 more years of Obama and Clinton's misbegotten views of America, their inexperience, and their incompetence. And as conservatives, we can now finally do something about it. I think it's critical to get national security back on the radar screen where it has not been for 6 years. And I'll tell you something, political operatives and media commentators have long ignored the fact that the American people have an inherent realism about foreign and defense policy. Most people focus on issues close to them, particularly the economy. That's entirely understandable, but it doesn't mean they are uninterested in international threats and challenges. Americans are very practical people. They delegate to the leaders they send to Washington the job of mastering the intricacies of national security issues. They expect that the president will alert them when there are threats and lay out a program to deal with those threats. But Barack Obama does not consider American national security a priority. He told us in 2008 his priority was to fundamentally transform the country, and as far as he's concerned, national security is a distraction from that. I believe he's the first president, Republican or Democrat, since the attack on Pearl Harbor, who does not wake up every morning and think, what threats does America face today? So when the president's not leading, the people expect that the loyal opposition will criticize him. But unfortunately, over the past 6 years, I have to say Republicans have collectively failed to do that. Perhaps because too many of our leaders buy the conventional political wisdom that national security is not a political priority. And today, we face the threat of neo-isolationism, which could result in incapacitating both of our major parties from leading America to defend its interest. The Republican Party is the party of national security. There is no national security wing in the Democratic Party and hasn't been for a long time. And while the citizens delegate to their leaders in Washington the responsibility for learning the details, they do not delegate holding leaders accountable for the consequences of their policies. I think voters have long equated foreign policy vision and competence with the critical quality of presidential leadership. They understand instinctively that ignoring international dangers makes those dangers neither easier to resolve nor makes them go away. The opposite is true. Problems fester and grow harder to resolve when you don't address them. And when politicians are manifestly not fulfilling their responsibilities, we the people react, as happened in the 2014 elections. You know, despite the conventional wisdom that foreign affairs don't matter, the reality has a way of intruding, and it did in 2014. ISIS beheading American citizens. This month in Paris, we've seen radical Islamists kill 16 innocent people at Charlie Hebdo and at that kosher grocery store, and more bad news is coming. But the people saw what happened last year, and they made Obama's national security failures critical in several key elections. I think the message was unambiguous. Right here in Iowa, Joni Ernst, an Iraq veteran, ran an insurgent campaign defeating a Democratic opponent once thought to be a sure winner. And I know we are all aware of Joni's most famous television commercial. But what I remember from that commercial was when it appeared on the screen and said, "Mother, soldier, conservative." Very powerful in her victory. And she will be a great senator, as she's already demonstrated in her response to the State of the Union and here this morning. Nearby in Arkansas, Tom Cotton, another veteran, expressly made foreign and defense policy the centerpiece of his campaign, along with his military service. I think he will be another great leader in Washington. In North Carolina, Tom Tillis fought off a neo-isolationist challenge in the Republican primary and made his Democratic opponents' lack of attention to Islamist terrorism a key issue, and he won. Martha McSally in Arizona's 2nd Congressional District, the first female Air Force combat squadron leader, was able to go from a significant deficit and win a very closely contested seat in the House. She's going to be a great leader as well. And even in those races like Scott Brown in New Hampshire, where the Republican candidate did not win, national security brought Scott Brown to the brink of victory. And I think when you put this together, it shows that foreign and defense policy are going to be even more important in 2016. Certainly, the foreign threats and challenges that the United States faces are not going to diminish over the next 2 years. In fact, our adversaries all around the world are calibrating their own policies to take advantage of the remaining 2 years of the Obama administration. They understand that they have a precious opportunity against a weak and ineffective president to advance their agenda before hopefully a stronger, more competent president takes office. But significantly, I think the voters understand, even if the political operatives do not, that Adam Smith was right when he said in The Wealth of Nations, the first duty of the sovereign is that of protecting the society from the violence and invasion of other independent societies. That's the president's main job. And when the president fails at that, he fails at everything. Now let's discuss what's gone wrong over the past 6 years and will unfortunately likely go wrong in the next 2. I only have a limited amount of time. We could be here all day discussing that. But I'll try and summarize it. Basically, the report card on the Obama-Clinton-Kerry record is one of continued failure. It failed every step of the way. For 6 years, Obama has basically tried to avoid national security policy. He sees these international threats as distracting from that objective of fundamentally transforming America, and he's not done yet. He doesn't believe in the global war against terrorism. He said so repeatedly. He thinks it can be handled as a law enforcement matter, as if we can unilaterally declare the war over. We didn't seek this war. We don't want it. But Americans will not allow their fellow citizens to be killed with impunity. We will show that. People say, oh, but there's war weariness and we've been in Afghanistan a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, what will happen if Taliban and al-Qaeda take back over in Afghanistan, and it's again a base for the kinds of attacks we saw on 9/11? What happens if Pakistan falls and the arsenal of nuclear weapons there falls into the hands of Pakistani Taliban or other radicals? The fact is there's war weariness because of a lack of leadership. Would you rather defend America far away, or would you rather defend it in our streets? That's an easy question, ladies and gentlemen. But Obama gets an F for utter lack of effort or attention. He won't call Islamic terrorism what it just is. You just heard Newt explain that in wonderful detail. Instead, what do we have? Man-caused disasters, workplace violence, violent extremism. What parallel universe are these people in? Even as Muslim political leaders like General al-Sisi, the president of Egypt, call for a revolution in Islam. Go to the largest Coptic Christian church in Egypt on the Coptic Christian Eve and wish the parishioners Merry Christmas, an incredibly brave political act. We now see in the wake of the attacks in Paris that the government of Belgium takes a stronger counterterrorism posture than the Obama White House. It's amazing. And in the meantime, chaos is descending all across the Middle East. One crisis after another is melding into another as American influence declines. Look at what's just happened this week. In Yemen, the government has completely collapsed, now joining the governments of Somalia, Libya, Iraq, and Syria in total collapse. The al-Houthis are a surrogate for the Ayatollahs in Tehran. They're now at the back door of Saudi Arabia and the countries that produce much of the world's oil. And in the same former country of Yemen, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has its principal base. The terrorists are expanding their efforts and threaten us around the world. And this was the country that the president himself singled out as one of the successes of his counterterrorism strategy. Imagine what the failures are like. And the failures are too sad to recall. 2.5 years ago, our ambassador in Libya, Chris Stevens, 3 other Americans killed by terrorists in Benghazi. And here we are, these years later, there has been no retaliation, no retribution for killing American citizens. What does it tell the terrorists around the world when the ambassador, the president's personal representative, is killed and we do nothing about it? That says to the terrorists, we can walk on this country. And that is a terrible lesson to learn. That's not our America. Now, we see the president shunning our friends, treating with our adversaries. This is a president who thinks, as the Middle East deteriorates, that the principal problem is Israel's construction of apartment buildings in East Jerusalem. This is a president who's so busy that when Prime Minister Netanyahu visits in a few days, he won't have time to see him. What does that tell our friends? What does that tell our adversaries? The president has failed all across, but he gets an F for being blind to terrorism and not protecting the country. He has done a poor job on nuclear proliferation. We're about to sign a deal with the Ayatollahs of Iran that legitimize their nuclear weapons program and allow them to proceed to weaponize at a time of their choice. It endangers Israel, it endangers our Arab friends, it endangers us. North Korea, one of the poorest countries in the world, has detonated 3 nuclear devices. The commander of U.S. Forces Korea has just said they're very close to being able to miniaturize their device, put it in a warhead on a ballistic missile that in short order will be able to reach the west coast of the United States. And what has the president done? All but obliterated our missile defense program. He has no policy on proliferation, and when it is, it's a policy of appeasement. We've seen North Korea attack Sony Pictures in a cyber attack that should tell us about the risk we're in. The only silver lining to the attack was that at least the North Koreans attacked Hollywood instead of an important business. We've just dodged, I hope, the threat of Ebola, but don't think this is over. We've had testimony from defectors from Russia that the Soviets and the Russians had focused on Ebola as a biological weapon. And what are we doing on that threat around the world under Obama? Next to nothing. So I think Obama gets an F for not standing up to nuclear proliferators like Iran and North Korea and not protecting Israel against the threat of a nuclear holocaust. And it goes on and on. Remember the reset button with Russia, Secretary Clinton. That has been an embarrassment. As Russia uses military force on the continent of Europe and Ukraine, again in Georgia, to change international boundaries, something we fought 2 world wars for in the last century to prevent again. And it's happening right in front of us, and we're doing nothing. We've got a China that's making aggressive territorial moves in the South and East China Sea that has one of the world's most sophisticated cyber warfare capabilities, is building weapons that can destroy our eyes in the sky, our satellites, in time of warfare, as Obama allows our Navy to sink to a level of ships at sea not seen since 1916. So an F on the reset button policy, an F on Asia policy generally. And Obama has not protected American sovereignty. For all of you who care about important domestic social issues, never forget that the left in this country, dissatisfied with what it gets in our democratic process, tries to go international, to take issues like gun control, the Arms Trade Treaty, and impose them on the United States externally, that takes issues of life and family and religious liberty and tries to constrain them around the world, where issues that we think should be debated properly in free and open debate here, they want to send to the United Nations. That's deep in Obama's heart. So American security is not just economic and political and military. It's about these critical issues, too. And Obama gets an F on protecting American sovereignty. He's damaged our defense budget. The list goes on and on. Now, we're in danger as a result. But what should the voters of Iowa and other key states do in judging presidential candidates for next year? Iowa and the other early states have a unique capacity to drive the political debate. Your exports, manufacturing, and agriculture, like those across our country, are powerful drivers in explaining why America's place in the world is critical to our domestic economy. The candidates have to address your concerns. If you make foreign and defense policy a priority, you can set the agenda and force the would-be nominees to answer your questions. Now, how should we do this? What should we be looking for? I say, first, voters should reject any candidate who treats national security policy in a dismissive or offhand way. It is not enough to check the box by mentioning foreign policy every once in a while. This is not about slogans or bumper stickers. Even if the international environment were calm and unthreatening, which it most certainly is not, central to presidential leadership is the ability to anticipate challenges and address them while the costs are still relatively small. Simply ignoring threats, hoping they won't materialize, or a candidate saying that he or she will rely on well-qualified foreign policy advisors is just not acceptable. Second, candidates should be proudly patriotic. They should defend against threats. It's amazing we even have to say that, don't we? But it's true. The candidates should defend against threats to American sovereignty wherever they appear. They should assert that a strong American international presence is positive and necessary for us and our allies. They should reject the Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and neo-isolationist viewpoints that vigorously protecting our interest worldwide is in itself somehow a cause of conflict and instability. Say clearly that America is a benign force globally, providing order and stability, providing the foundations for the interlocking global economy and our way of life here at home. U.S. strength is not the problem. It's the solution. Our strength acts as a deterrent, reducing the risk of international conflict, not provoking it. Third, candidates must demonstrate they understand how closely interwoven domestic and foreign policy are. Accelerating our weak economic recovery requires appreciating that the economy is not simply a domestic issue. A strong economy depends on that strong international presence. These are not alternative priorities, but are inextricably connected. Huge budget deficits, excessive taxes, counterproductive energy policy sap our economy and undercut our strategic capabilities internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in far more danger today than we were 6 years ago. We cannot repeat the mistakes of 2008 and 2012 in 2016. Now, let's be clear. The security of America does not depend on the people who are speaking before you today. It depends on you. It's our security and our sovereignty. If we don't take it seriously, no one else will. And I know that you do. Thank you very much. Thank you.